Okay, now we're getting back close to the timber. So that bed's in there about, whoops, that bed's in there about 150 yards from the timber. We haven't really done anything yet that would make it, you know, where it was inaccessible for somebody with regular boots. But when you start going through this kind of stuff, you leave your hunting competition behind. Very, very few hunters are willing to do this. That's why you see so many stands on open areas, open timber, because they're just not willing to put the effort. Because this stuff here, I mean, this is just hard to get through. And you have to make some kind of an entry and exit route, and you got to mark it. Obviously, you're not supposed to cut stuff, but you can't break stuff off and, you know, break little branches off, so you've got some semblance of an entry and an exit. But typically, hunters are just not willing to put the work forth to come through this kind of stuff. Okay, this is a lot of times what happens. You go through several hundred yards of crap, briars, autumn olive, brush, red brush. Even went through these pines up on this hill, and there's little runways here and there, but it was just solid trash at the bottom of that because those pines are kind of open, letting a lot of sunlight in. But as soon as we came out of there, we came up on that side through heavy, heavy brush. And that's the only access. There's no access from this side over here to my left. But now that we're up through all that brush, and we have seen zero sign of any hunting whatsoever, it kind of opens up. And a lot of times that's what you see. Once you get through the junk, you cross a river, you cross a lake, and there's going to be brush and nasty stuff on the edges of the lake, or once you cross a river because it's low ground and it's weedy and they bed in that stuff. But once you get past that, a lot of times it opens up into stuff like this. I mean, there's still tons and tons of security cover if you pan that over there, but you'll see openings like this. And when you see these little openings, there's a lot of activity through these little tiny openings. When we come down over this hill, I'm betting there's going to be 2 or 3 runways that are going to be going through that opening down there. And that opening looks like it's no more than 20 yards from side to side. But it's totally surrounded by autumn olive. It looks like there's a cattail marsh on the other side of it, going into a tamarack swamp. But this little area right in here is open. And this is a great little spot. As long as you can get back here and access it without spooking everything in the world, you know, this is definitely a huntable spot. It's a great all-day sit because there's going to be bucks without question coming through this autumn olive, going through those marshes, coming through these pines during pre-rut and during rut, you know, scent checking for does that have come through here because there's going to be deer bedding, you know, helter-skelter throughout this whole place. So bucks are just going to be on the search, you know, prior to picking up that first estrus doe. And this here looks like it's going to be a really, really good spot. This here's a transition spot, but it's a transition spot where I'm betting a lot of sign converges right down here through this little opening down this little side hill. I'm on a runway right here. There's a runway right there, and it all comes down this hill going towards that little opening. So let's see what's down there. Here we go. This big runway, we just come across another big runway coming right down through here, right into this opening. We're actually down in this opening. This looks like it might have been a scrape. That might have been a licking branch. I may be wrong, but it looks like that was opened up last year. Got briars. Come on down here. You can see another runway coming up through here. So turn around and look at the runway we just came down. And then that runway over there. And then when we come down here, There's a runway right there going right up through that autumn olive. Nice little clearing. And that's what they do in autumn olives a lot of times. They'll find little areas and they'll bust, because autumn olive branches break really easy. And a buck going through there with antlers will kind of keep it open. The branches bust off really easy on autumn olive. So you got a runway up there, you got a runway here, you got a runway coming through here. Got a runway going over there. Got one coming in down there. Got one coming in right here. It's a little more subtle. This here, yep, this here was a scrape last year. That's a licking branch. This is definitely a great little spot. Great little opening. There'll be a lot of activity here. This spot here, you gotta keep your ears and eyes open. You gotta stay on, you gotta keep on your toes, because a deer could be coming down through this stuff at any moment, any time of the day, during the pre-rut and during rut phases. This is definitely an all-day spot. If there's an all-day spot I've ever seen in my lifetime, this is it, for sure. It's gonna be hard to get to, but this is a spot that's I'm gonna have to be back here an hour and a half to 2 hours before daylight and get set up. And there's plenty of trees here. They're all black cherries for the most part, but they're all the right diameter, easy to get up with anything that's strap on. So I'll just have to pick something out. And this is typically how I work it. I do my scouting, mark my stuff on a Onyx, and then I go back and prep it. I take the gear back in to prep it, because carrying extension saws and backpacks and all the other stuff that you need, obviously saws on public land's not cool, but carrying the gear that you need, sticks and stuff like that, or steps or whatever, you know, you don't want to be bucking brush when you're just scouting. So you do all your scouting, you kind of Onyx mark as waypoints the places you want to set up, and then you come back with your gear and set the suckers up. And this is a spot where I'm pretty sure I can leave my stuff here. I'm not too worried about somebody stealing it. So during season, you know, pre-season, when I come back here and set this up, it's something I'm not going to be too afraid of somebody finding it and stealing it. This is just an awesome, awesome spot. I just got to pick out which tree. And there's an oak right there too. There's a red oak. But anyway, this spot here is about a half a mile, maybe a little farther than that from that spot. It's on the same public land. We walked through about another quarter mile of swamp, marsh and swamp, and then we hit some dry ground, and then it turned into just autumn olive, just nasty, nasty autumn olive. And basically we were just crawling through whatever, you know, runway funnels we could find in the autumn olive, and then busting through the rust, and kind of looking at our Onyx, looking for some dry ground. And we did find some dry ground on our Onyx, and we pushed our way through to get to that. It was nasty. I don't know how many of you guys have dealt with going through autumn olive very much, but it's not fun. So the challenge for this spot is going to be getting in there before daylight, because this spot here is also going to be another all-day sit type spot. So anyway, this over here was that swamp with those scattered tamaracks, these little black spots. There was just tamaracks and little patches of brush all through this swamp, and there's cattails in this swamp, just mounds of dirt, wet. It was definitely wet. And then we ran into then it got dry, and this whole area here was just solid autumn olive. And I mean, it is thick and very, very nasty. It's not something you could go through before daylight without having some sort of a marked path. So basically, once I found this, we moved around and we did find a way to get to it. But anyway, we came up through all this autumn olive by looking at our Onyx. We could see some dry land, and we looked on the Onyx and we seen this little opening. So when we got up through here, we found these old pines, and most of them are tipped over, so it's really heavy understory, briars and stuff underneath them. There's a few standing, but they're all red pines. And there was some heavy runways coming through the pines actually, but a main runway coming down here. So we kind of jumped on that runway And we kind of noticed where you see these orange lines, it was an opening. It was an opening through this autumn olive. It was autumn olive, thick autumn olive on both sides, but there was a little bit of a narrow gap, and it got wider in some spots and narrower in others. And then it went down a little slight hill, and it went through this. There was an opening right here. I mean, how that opening got in the middle of that autumn olive, I have no idea. And I shouldn't say in the middle, because it was over to the one side of it. Because probably just off of this little opening, 25-yard opening right here, probably another 20 yards through some more autumn olive, it turned back into swamp with tamaracks. Kind of similar to what it was over here. But anyway, this little opening was awesome. There was runways coming in here from every direction, coming in here out of the swamp, coming through, there was tunnels through the autumn olive, and just because it was an opening, it was a spot that deer generally go through because it's a path of least resistance. And there was 2 scrapes under autumn olive trees right over on that one side. So there was a tree right here, which would have been on this would be the northwest side of this opening, and it's about a 25-yard shot to those 2 scrapes. And basically that's a wide open opening. You could shoot right across it. I could shoot any place around the perimeter. And right around the perimeter of this opening, the autumn olive got a lot thicker, but it was super simple. If you stood in that opening and just turned around in a circle, you could see the runways coming. They're just like little tunnels going underneath this autumn olive. Autumn olive is almost like creates a bridge over these tunnels. And autumn olive's real brittle branches, so deer going through there, if they rub against branches, they'll break them off. So the runways kind of stay open by themselves, although I did go through on all of the runways and pick up branches and push them out of the way to make it a little bit easier for deer to transition down through there, especially deer with antlers. So anyway, that's the tree that I picked out to hunt. It's going to be pretty easy to get into. It wasn't that big around. It's probably 20 inches, 22-inch diameter. It's going to give me a shot to that whole entire opening, so I don't even have to cut any shooting lanes. I may, even though it's public land, I may snap off some autumn olive, because some of these autumn olives right here got a little bit tall, so I may have to snap off a couple of the top branches, but they're dead anyway. Autumn olive, the branches, once they get old, they just die, and they're really brittle and they snap. Okay, so anyway, that's going to be a spot. That's going to be a really, really good spot. Very, very difficult that's going to be to get to, for a morning hunt. And there's no way I'd go there in the evening, because there's going to be deer bedded around here, not spook anything with an evening sit. So it's going to be primarily only going to be an all-day sit spot during the rut. Thanks for watching another episode of Eberhard Outdoors, and please like and subscribe.